everyone, and welcome to Back to the Bench TV. And what a pleasure we have today. 356 gamer, All-Australian and AFL premiership coach, Paul Roos joins the bench. Thanks for coming on, Paul. Great to have you on, mate.
Good on you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Not bad. Just plodding along in Melbourne, opening up slowly now. So get our life back. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Well, I came over a while ago to visit my wife's family. Dad got a little bit sick, so we were able to get out of the country, which was great to visit him. So I caught up with him, which was nice. So, and then we have a house in Hawaii, so we made our way to the house in Hawaii, and just sort of over here for a while.
Yeah, beautiful. I hope you're enjoying it up there. So we'll start with your coaching career. So you were coach for, I think, 9 years, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in the AFL system. Coach of Sydney and Melbourne, respectively. I just want to know, straight off the bat, what was that journey like overall coaching, and what were the biggest lessons you learned from your coaching career?
Yeah, it was certainly very different to playing. I took over Sydney halfway through a season, so I really hadn't have thought whether I was going to be a senior coach. You know, Rodney Eade was coaching and I was assistant coach, and I was sort of sitting back assessing what I wanted to do. And then one day, he left the club and resigned, and then they asked me to do the job. So probably the start was a little bit different to what I anticipated. But I really enjoyed the next 10 weeks because it was probably not as stressful and a little bit more relaxing because there was no expectations on the team. You know, we couldn't make the finals. So we just changed a little bit, and we ended up winning sort of 6 of the 10 games. And then at the end of that first half of the year, I got the job, and then I coached for 8 years at Sydney. And obviously it was different then, but we were really fortunate. Had a great group of players, really disciplined, really accountable, really worked for each other. And we ended up winning the premiership in 2005 and had a lot of success. Played in the grand final in 2006 and only missed the finals, 1 year, which was in 2009. Got back in the finals in 2010. So, look, I loved my time at Sydney. It was amazing. Great people, and really, learned a lot about what coaching's all about. And then when I got to Melbourne, it was very, very different because Melbourne were in a different situation. And it was really probably more of managing the whole football department and getting coaches in from Sydney that were able to, do the X's and O's and coach the actual team itself. So I saw myself more as a football manager there and overseeing the whole program along with Josh Marnie. And so it was very different. And I really couldn't have done the Melbourne role had I not had the 8 years experience at Sydney. But, they're both really enjoyable. Melbourne had some really good people. We were able to take the club from 2 wins to 10 wins over a 3-year period. So, it was a great time as well. Yeah,
brilliant. So before you actually got into your AFL career as a coach, I read up that you went to USA to coach the national team against Canada, which was quite surprising because I never heard of that. I also know what was that experience like? Obviously, taking AFL players against amateurs, was it, in Canada? They don't play footy over there professionally, so.
Yeah, it was interesting. My wife's American, and we decided after retired in 1998 we were going to live in America for 10 months. So we sort of uprooted, went over to America, and I was sitting at home at her place one day, at a family's place, and a phone rang, and it was a gentleman called Paul O'Keefe, who was the president of the United States Australian Football League, and I didn't even know it existed. And he said, Roosie, what are you doing? I said, mate, I'm over here just, relaxing, spending 10 months. And he said, well, would you like to do some clinics around America? And I said, mate, sounds like fun. So he was able to get some funding from the AFL, and the AFL sent some money over to him, and they funded me to fly around. And I did a couple of clinics in LA, an umpires clinic in Denver, another couple on the East Coast. And eventually I got asked to coach the US Revolution against Canada in Chicago, which was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And they were either, green card Australians or obviously national Americans. And it was amazing. We beat Canada, and the captain of the team was an American. And we had some really good American players that were in their late 20s and were great athletes and loved the game, loved the sport. And, I said from that moment, if the AFL invested heavily in the United States, they'd have some amazing players out there playing now. But, it's obviously a different frontier, and they chose to invest in, Africa and China and India and New Zealand. And but certainly if they had to put a lot of money in America, you'd see, way more than Mason Cox and Jason Holmes running around. And there'd be some incredible athletes running around the AFL right now.
Yeah, I reckon they should actually. I think about that. They should actually look at that because speaking of bringing the game, to a new level and making it globally, America would obviously be a great spot. Do you think that'll actually ever happen, or?
Yeah, actually, ironically, I spoke to Paul O'Keefe just recently. He rang me again and we reconnected, which was fantastic. Look, as I said, it would have been amazing had they have done it back in 1999. I mean, they had some incredible people over here. A lot of Australians that had come over for work and, or they're going to university. A lot of really, really smart Australians that love their footy. So the infrastructure was here to actually provide a platform for American players to learn and grow. Look, it's still possible, but I just wish they had picked it up. The AFL had picked it up, 10 plus years ago. It would have been amazing.
Yeah. So back on your AFL coaching career. So you started at Sydney, as you said before, as assistant coach to Rodney Eade, who in 2002 got the sack. Obviously, a few bad losses, and then before you know it, you're taking over as caretaker coach. I just want to know, you being relatively, inexperienced as the main coach at AFL, what was it feeling like at the time, when you got the gig and, were you nervous, overwhelmed, excited? What was the overall feeling?
Yeah, it was a strange week. We lost to Geelong and we had a bye the following week. And then on the Monday, Rodney decided to leave. And then by Tuesday, we were talking as a club that who was going to take over. I think there was myself, John Longmire and Steve Malaxos were sort of the assistant coaches. At one stage, we talked about maybe rotating it, all three of us doing it together. And then the club said, would you do it? And probably the difficulty was they didn't give me any guarantees that I would do it beyond the 10 weeks. So that was probably the hardest thing, to commit to coaching and not knowing this could be the only 10 weeks you ever coached in your career. And you're obviously coaching a team that was down on confidence and hadn't won a lot of games. So, yeah, well, it was a big risk, but I decided to do it. Had a really good group of players. I knew the players well. I'd played with them. They were really good people. And I felt, if we didn't have to change a lot. Rodney was a good coach and we played in the grand final in 96. This was midway through 2002, and we played in a lot of final series up until that stage. So we had some good talent there. I enjoyed the remaining 10 weeks, and I think we won 6 and lost 4 of them. So we had a fair bit of success during that period. It was nerve-wracking. It was difficult. It was interesting, but the support of the players and the coaches and the club was amazing.
Yeah. So as you just said there, you actually won 6 of your last 10 in 2002 after, it wasn't a great season that year at the start. And then following 2 years, you make the finals, and then 2005, you win the grand final by a kick. I just want to know, what actually changed when you took over? And along with that, if there's 1 or 2 players within the 4 walls of Sydney who helped, turn around the culture and winning culture of the Sydney team, what was it, or who was it?
Yeah, I think with Rocket, sometimes coaches just have it used by date, whether it's me or Rodney Eade or Lee Matthews, even after winning 3 premierships at Brisbane. It doesn't matter who they are. I think sometimes the players just get tired. So I really sensed there wasn't a lot wrong with the playing group, and probably the players were a little bit tired of the coaching group and just needed a change. So from that point of view, I didn't really have to change much. And we went into 2003. We really empowered the players. We picked our own leadership group, or they picked their own leadership group. Stewie Maxfield became captain. I think that was significant. Stewie as captain was just a really significant appointment, and really the first of probably not the most talented player in the team being captain. It was the first captain of the real role model era. What do you want your captain to stand for? What do you want your club to stand for? And then the captain driving the standard. So he was incredibly significant. In winning the premiership. Unfortunately, he didn't get to play. He hurt his knee at the start of 2005 and had to step down. That was really, really sad. Probably the other one, and Stewie can take credit for this as well. I mean, I think Kirky was going to get the flick at the end of 2002 based on Rocket and the way Rocket thought about him. And Stewie came into match committee one day and said, look, what about we try Kirky as a run-with player, and we all looked at Stewie and said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. And so the back end of 2002, we gave him some roles and he just excelled in that area. So Stewie probably needs to take credit for being captain, but also unearthing, one of the best Swans players of all times, and certainly a player that drove the standards as well in Brett Kirk. But there was many, many players that stood up, and played exceptionally well. And that's the reason why we won a premiership in 2005, because I just had a group of players that were committed to each other, committed to doing their role within the team. And it didn't matter which one. They were all, very, very committed to the Sydney Swans Footy Club.
Yeah. So also in 2005, that premiership year, your coaching style was actually heavily criticised by AFL CEO Andrew Dimitru. He wasn't a fan of your defensive style game plan, referred it to as the ugly ducklings, I'm pretty sure. He actually even said you'd never win the flag playing like that. And then remarkably, that same year, you prove the doubters wrong, you win the flag. Even more special, after 72-year drought, you got that flag. So I just want to know, how did you take these comments at the time, and how does it feel to actually prove these doubters wrong?
Yeah, I just thought that was strange. I mean, it was a really strange thing for the CEO of the AFL to say, because we were the only team in Sydney and we were the brand. We were the AFL brand in Sydney. And I always say it'd be like the CEO of Coca-Cola saying, don't drink Coca-Cola in Sydney, drink Pepsi. It was just a weird thing to say, and no one held him accountable to it. But it didn't really affect us too much. And I mean, I think the other thing that I knew that, I couldn't have run the AFL and he couldn't have coached the Swans. So, I'm very careful at only talking about things that I understand. And obviously that's not Andrew's way. He's very different to that. So it didn't really affect us too much. We just knew we weren't playing very good footy. There's a difference between being out of form and having a game style that can't win a premiership. So, look, it was great. It was great to win the premiership in 2005, but to be honest, it had nothing to do with any sort of bitterness towards Andrew, and it was just a comment he made and didn't really affect us too much. And we started to play better footy, and obviously our game style stood up in finals, and we won the premiership. Yeah,
was his comments based upon just simply financial reasons, like getting bums on seats, or do you think it was for the brand of the game, like how it looked to fans, or what do you think his comments were? What was the basis for that?
I think they were just naive. I think he really had no idea how to coach a footy team. So I think it was just maybe frustration because Sydney's such a big market, and they really did want us to win. So it's frustrating when a team in a big market is not doing well, and we understood that because, I came up with when Tony Lockett came up, and the year before Plugger got there, 94, and prior that, they hadn't won many games at all. So we were all aware of the pressure on Sydney, a rugby league, rugby union town. I think maybe the pressure just got to him a little bit, and he just got a bit frustrated because the team was struggling. So, but he's very naive and didn't really understand how to coach a footy team, as I didn't. I wouldn't have been able to had a clue how to run the AFL.
Yeah, fair enough. So we'll move on to your next phase of your coaching career. After a few years out of the coaching system, you in 2013 went to Melbourne Football Club, senior coach for 2 years, and an option for the third, which you did take. I just want to know straight away, walking into Melbourne Football Club, what were the main differences between a club like them who were struggling and someone like Sydney who were relatively successful, coming for premiership and multiple final series?
Yeah, I think the habits that they'd formed, when you're losing games of football for sort of 5 or 6 years, it's dramatically different to when I took over at Sydney. A lot of the Sydney players had really good habits through Rocket and the coaching staff. And, as I said, we played in the finals in 96, 97, 98, I think 2001 or whatever it was. So, the Sydney players were used to success. The Melbourne players had no success for sort of 6 years. And the year before I took over, they won 2 games. So they had really bad on-field habits, and they just didn't know how to play, AFL football at the highest level. They had a desire and a want to do it, but they had no education around what it looked like. So we were starting from a long way back, but thankfully had a good group of players, group of players that wanted to learn, were eager to train hard. But we just had to start from square one. And to the players' credit, the guys that stuck around and did really, really well, we were able to get from 2 wins to 10 wins. And I think with 2 rounds to go in the last season I was there, we were 10-10 and had a sneaky chance to play in finals. But we just ran out of steam and we're really tired at that particular stage. It's a dramatic difference between the 2 footy clubs, the Sydney Swans and the Melbourne Footy Club.
Yeah. So when you arrive at Melbourne Football Club, I want to know, how big of a task did you expect to have, considering their, darkies at the bottom? Did you think there's a lot to change? What were you expecting going into the Melbourne Football Club?
Yeah, thankfully Peter Jackson, who was the CEO, was really honest. You know, he didn't paint a really rosy picture.
Yeah.
He told me exactly why it was, and because I knew how difficult the job was, it in a sense it made it easier because I didn't go in with any preconceived ideas that, gee, this is going to be easy. I knew how hard it was. So from day one, myself, Ben Matthews, George Stone, Brett Allison, Daniel McPherson, who all came from the Sydney system, we knew what we were in for, and we had a great ally in Jade Rawlings, and Todd Viney was fantastic, and Josh Marnie. So we had some insiders that knew a lot about the Melbourne Footy Club and some outsiders that knew how to drive success. So it was a really good combination, a strong combination. But yeah, I knew exactly how hard it was going to be, and it certainly was, you know, really, really difficult. A lot of hard work from a lot of people to get the club from 2 wins to 10 wins, and then obviously playing the preliminary final 2 years after I left.
Yeah. And also on that, what were the main changes you thought you had to bring to Melbourne, and what changes did you sort of internally implement to turn them around? Obviously, they went on and improved their winning percentage since you took over. So, yeah, what were the main changes you sort of brought into the club?
Yeah, the system was the same. So we sort of put in the same system as we did at Sydney, similar game style that we did at Sydney, but it just took longer. You know, we had to really educate the senior players. Probably that was the biggest thing. You know, the senior players at Sydney had pretty good habits and knew how to play. And, you know, whereas the leaders of Melbourne had to be taught the way we wanted to play. And we couldn't have our leaders on the video not doing the right thing. So we sort of did 2 reviews at Melbourne. We did a team review, and then also I did a review with the leaders and just took the leaders in, you know, sat them down by themselves and myself and went through the vision again and said, guys, look, you know, you need to be role models. If we're going to get this club where we want to get to, you have to maintain really, really high standards. So that was probably the main difference. You know, but everything else was sort of similar. We just had to start a lot further back at Melbourne. And I really couldn't have done the job at Melbourne had I not had the experience of coaching Sydney.
Yeah, of course. So I want to ask more of a broad question now. Over your, 10 to 15 years being in the coaching system, you got rumours are you had a few clubs knocking your door over the last 10 years or so. Was there one club you sort of sat down with and you were really close to signing with? I heard Carlton were in the mix. I'm not sure who else, but yeah.
Yeah, a number of clubs have spoken to me for sure. Look, it's probably always been right time, right place. Obviously, when I started at Sydney, I was there for 8.5 years, and then I was out for 3 years. So during that 3-year period, I had a number of phone calls and people, inquiring about what I was going to do. But it always had to be the right fit. It's a very difficult job and a very demanding job. So you can't, put one toe in. You've got to be all in. And never at any stage up until I coached Melbourne did I feel prepared again, with my family, my boys, where they were at with their life and so forth. So, when I look back, I'm really pleased I was able to stay at Sydney for 8.5 years. I was pleased I had a break and coached the Sydney Swans Academy for 3 years. Really pleased I took the Melbourne job. Really enjoyed that. And then post that, I've got the queue in the rack now, and, at the moment, I'm just helping the North Melbourne Footy Club out with their search for a coach. And, as far as I'm concerned, it's the next generation now that's got to come in. And obviously there's a great opportunity for that next level of coaches to coach at AFL level.
Yeah. So just on North Melbourne, what's your actual role there? Have you been appointed or something yet, or done nothing? Yeah,
look, at the moment, they've asked me to help with the search and then help, put their high-performing program together. I'm great mates with Johnny Blakey, who's their senior assistant there. And so John and I talk, and Brady and I talk, and Ben Buckley. But the main focus at the moment is, getting the coach in place.
Okay. So, on the coaching search, obviously you're helping out, as you said. What's the main, sort of credentials you're looking at for a North Melbourne coach? And what does this coach need to entail to get this club back up ladder?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to search far and wide, is just to throw the net everywhere and to do the research on every coach and then to narrow it down as much as we can and then to go through a process. So, that's all you can really do, because unless you nail, an Alistair Clarkson, a John Longmire or a Damien Hardwick or something like that, that has coached the premiership, you're just trying to minimise the downside and look at what their real strengths are and how good they are, and maybe sort of say, look, they've got 2 or 3 weak points, but we can deal with that because we've got John Blakey or we've got, Gavin Brown or we've got someone else. So look, at the moment, it's just a really wide search and really trying to narrow that down.
Yeah. And last question now, I probably should ask this before, but who was the best player you think you coached over your coaching career in the AFL? And the second part to that is, who is one player you thought, had enormous potential but never reached it because, maybe some mental aspect or physical injury? I want to get your thoughts on that.
Look, I always, the first question I always answer a little bit differently because I prided myself and the coaches at Sydney and Melbourne always, picking someone in the position you believe they're physically capable of carrying it out, whether that was size or strength or speed or, So there's probably two players that belied that theory. One was Leo Barry. Leo Barry, we moved into the back line, I think, when Rocket was still coached. Leo was 184 centimetres, like an 84 kilos. He was playing on guys who were 6'4" and 99 kilos. I mean, he had no right to be the player that he became. So to watch him do what he did and to use his footy brain, to use his athleticism and to beat, he kept Fraser Gehrig kickless one day when I think St Kilda were 9-0 or 10-0 when we played him at the SCG. He kept them to not one kick. So he's probably one, as I said, answering it slightly differently. The other one was Mickey O'Loughlin. Mickey was a great half-forward flanker. 6'2", 85, 86 kilos, super agile, then got knee tendonitis. And really, we asked Mick to play as full forward because he hardly trained at all. He couldn't do any pre-season with his knee tendonitis. He had to put on some weight to get some size and bulk as a full forward. So we had a full back that was 184 centimetres and about 84 kilos. And we had a full forward that was sort of 6'1.5", 6'2", that was normally an 86 kilos. So our bookends were really unique in terms of size, but both incredible at what they did and probably stand out for the reason because, coach's job is to always give someone the best chance to be the best player they can. And these two guys had no right to be as good as players they were, given what we were asking them to do and their physical stature. Not their football ability, because their football ability was off the charts, but just, their physical stature and in terms of what we were asking them to do in that position that they were playing.
Yeah.
And the second question, what was the second question?
Oh, just a player like you thought of, the most upside.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them, and they're probably the most frustrating. Because you see so much talent go through the system and you see them not working, really hard enough, and you keep driving them and driving them and driving them and driving. And then you probably realise it's an individual choice, it's up to them. We can only do so much to, get them to where they want to get to. And really at the end of the day, it's a personal choice, for them to be able to get there. Again, I'll probably answer it slightly differently because Nick Davis was one that we really had to drive and drive and drive and drive. And he had incredible talent. And, the last quarter he played, and I'm so pleased because he's a good person, Nick. And, he sort of tried as hard as he could, but it wasn't natural to him to train and work really hard. So for him to do what he did in the last quarter of the qualifying final against Geelong and kick those 4 goals and to get us over the line, to get us in the grand final, because he was always much maligned about, being lazy and probably didn't live up to his talent. And probably overall maybe he didn't, but he certainly, if we didn't have Nick Davis playing for us in 2005, we would never have won the premiership, and every teammate would say the same thing. So again, slightly different answer to your question.
Okay, beautiful, brilliant. That's it for me today, Paul. Pleasure to have you on, mate. Hope you're enjoying your rest of your trip in Hawaii. And all the best, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Good on you, mate. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, Paul.